The Flood, Chapter 4. Prior to the cognitive revolution, humans of all species lived exclusively on the Afro-Asian landmass. True, they had settled a few islands by swimming short stretches of water or crossing them on improvised traps. Flores, for example, was colonized as far back as 150,000 years ago. Yet they were unable to venture into the open sea and numerous America, Australia, or remote islands such as Madagascar, New Zealand, and Hawaii. The sea barrier prevented not just humans, but also many other Afro-Asian animals and plants from reaching this outer world. As a result, the organisms of distant lands like Australia and Madagascar evolved in isolation for millions upon millions of years, taking on shapes and natures very different from those of their distant Afro-Asian relatives. Planet Earth was separated into several distinct ecosystems, each made up of a unique assembly of animals and plants. Homo sapiens was about to put an end to this biological exuberance. Following the cognitive revolution, sapiens acquired the technology, the organizational skills, and perhaps even the vision necessary to break out of Afro-Asia and settle the outer world. Their first achievement was the colonization of Australia some 45,000 years ago. Experts are hard-pressed to explain this feat. In order to reach Australia, humans had to cross a number of sea channels, some more than 100 kilometers wide, and upon arrival, they had to adapt nearly overnight to a completely new ecosystem. The most reasonable theory suggests that about 45,000 years ago, the sapiens living in the Indonesian archipelago, a group of islands separated from Asia and from each other by only narrow straits, developed the first seafaring societies. They learned how to build and maneuver ocean-going vessels and become long-distance fishermen, traders, and explorers. This would have brought about an unprecedented transformation in human capabilities and lifestyles. Every other mammal that went to sea, seals, sea cows, dolphins, had to evolve for eons to develop specialized organs and hydrodynamic body. The sapiens in Indonesia, descendants of apes who lived on the African savanna, become Pacific seafarers without crowing clippers and without having to wait for their noses to migrate to the top of their heads as whales did. Indeed, they built boats and learned how to steer them, and these skills enabled them to reach and settle Australia. 2. Archaeologists have yet to unearth traps or fishing villages that date back as far as 45,000 years ago. They would be difficult to discover because rising sea levels have buried the ancient Indonesian shoreline under 100 meters of ocean. Nevertheless, there is strong circumstantial evidence to support this theory, especially the fact that in the thousands of years following the settlement of Australia, sapiens colonized a large number of small and isolated islands to its north. Some, such as Buka and Manus, were separated from the closest land by 200 kilometers of open water. It's hard to believe that anyone could have reached and colonized Manus without sophisticated vessels and sailing skills. As mentioned earlier, this is also firm evidence for regular sea trade between some of the islands such as New Ireland and New Britain. The journey of the first humans to Australia is one of the most important events in history, at least as important as Columbus' journey to America and the Apollo 11 expedition to the moon. It was the first time any human had managed to leave the Afro-Asian ecological system. Indeed, the first time any large terrestrial mammal had managed to cross Afro-Asia to Australia. Of even greater importance was what human pioneers did in this new world. The moment the first hunter-gatherer set foot on an Australian beach was the moment that Homo Sapiens climbed up to the top, running the food chain, and became the deadliest species ever in 4 billion year history of life on Earth. Up until then, the humans had displayed some innovative adaptations and behaviors, but their effect on the environment have been negligible. They have demonstrated remarkable success in moving into and adjusting to various habitats, but they did so without drastically changing those habitats. The settlers of Australia, or more accurately, its conquerors, didn't just adapt. They transformed the Australian ecosystem beyond recognition. The first human footprint on a sandy beach, Australian beach, was immediately washed away by the wave. Yet, when the invader advanced inland, they left behind a different footprint, one that would never be exposed. As they pushed on, they encountered a strange universe of unknown creatures that included a 200 kilogram 2 meters kangaroo, a marsupial lion as massive as a modern tiger that was the continent's largest predator, koalas far too big to be cuddled and kill rustle in the trees, and flightless birds twice the size of ostriches sprinted on the plains. Dragon-like lizards and snakes 1 meter long slinthered through the undergrowth. The giant diprotodon and 2.5-ton wombat roamed the forest. Except for the birds and reptiles, all these animals were marsupials. Like kangaroos, they gave birth to tiny, helpless fetus like young, which they then nurtured with milk in abdominal pouches. Marsupial mammals was almost unknown in Africa and Asia, but in Australia they reigned supreme. Within a few thousand years, virtually all of these giants vanished. Of the 24 Australian animal species weighing 50 kilograms or more, 23 became extinct. A large number of smaller species also disappeared. Food chains throughout the entire Australian ecosystem were broken and rearranged. It was the most important transformation of Australian ecosystem for millions of years. Was it all the fault of Homo sapiens?